Welcome to Mozaik Unhinged, the podcast that brings together the people, the passion, and the stories behind Mozaik Software. I'm David Carr, and in this podcast, we'll go beyond the software to meet the people behind the craft. We'll talk to Mozaik customers, we'll talk to Mozaik team members, and we'll talk to industry partners, who will all share their unfiltered insights, experiences, and journeys that connect us all. We'll learn from each other, we'll share some stories and some laughs, and most of all, we'll build a stronger community. Because that's what it's all about. Whether you're in the workshop, you're in the office, or you're out on site, we're all connected via Mosaic in one way or another. And I want to share the stories that make this industry and the people in it so incredible. Welcome to another episode of Mozaik Unhinged. I'm your host, David Carr, and I'm joined today by our VP of Mozaik Software, Michael Dunphy. Michael has had quite the incredible journey, and he's come from quite humble beginnings, growing up in a cabinet making family, and now is shaping the future of cabinet making software. Thanks for joining me, Michael.
Thanks, Dave. It's nice to be with you.
It's pretty cool. We spend a lot of time talking off the record on kind of a lot of, various topics. Usually, I kind of joke that I probably spend more time talking to you than my wife most weeks. And my daughter actually overheard me last week. She said, "How was your day at work, Daddy?" And I said, "Oh yeah, it was good." And she's like, she goes, "I heard you talking to Michael, so that must have been nice." It's two very different accents from opposite parts of the world, and it's always pretty obvious to my daughter when we catch up and chat on Teams. So
yeah, no, always good catching up with Dave, but those pesky time zones.
Oh yeah, I hear. So how does it feel to be kicking off the podcast with us? It's only our second episode, so this is a bit of a new concept.
No, this is a great initiative. It's great to be with you. And you're certainly one of the most influential figures in our industry.
Well, I think for me, I'm kind of the front man that gets to tell the stories. But reason why I'm excited to be catching up with you today is you do a lot of the work behind the scenes and control the direction of this whole sort of ship. So I really want to share that story and give people insights into how some of these decisions get made and some of the complexities behind the scenes, and really share, I guess, your story as well, which,
For sure.
So I guess, like from my perspective, story is one of you've been involved in Mosaic for such a long time from almost the very beginning. And, now you're in a position where you're helping shape the direction and the future of Mosaic. I think the best part of this episode to me is really being able to share the story of that with the visitors or listeners of the show, and really help them connect with you and understand kind of your story as well.
Yeah, no, and it'd be travesty if I didn't mention our founder Roger Taylor, and he's really the spirit and the soul behind Mosaic, and I view my role as really just continuing what he began, and sticking true to our values and really making a difference for cabinet makers around the world now.
That's really cool. And I'm really keen today to dive into some of the history there and stories from those early days of working with Roger, and the things that you would have learned from him, no doubt, along the way as well. And I guess that kind of sets the tone a little bit. We want to kind of talk a bit about, in this episode, about the future and direction of Mosaic and where things are heading, understand a bit about the complexities that some of that brings. But also to do that, I think we've really got to wind the clock back and share some history of your involvement in the industry, even prior to Mosaic. My understanding is that you grew up in a cabinet making family.
I did, yeah. Some of my earliest memories of a cabinet shop were playing with a Tonka truck in a pile of sawdust.
No way.
Probably wouldn't get away with that anymore today. But yeah, no, I've always worked in a cabinet shop. My family made custom cabinets. That's all I remember from my childhood. Sweeping the floor for $2 an hour.
That's man, it would have been pretty interesting. So your family had a cabinet shop. Have they still got the shop, or what's the situation?
My father has recently sold his cabinet shop.
Wow.
I didn't continue the legacy. I'm continuing it in another way, let's say. But he recently sold it about a year ago, and he's he's almost sailing off into the sunset.
Nice. That's pretty
Spending
cool.
more time on the golf course.
And throughout the years, like how involved were you in the business, or did you spend time kind of working on the floor and building cabinets and that kind of thing?
Yeah. No, I every summer, from elementary school to high school, all through university, I worked in the cabinet shop. When when you're in elementary school working in a cabinet shop, you don't always get the best jobs. Emptying the dust collector to sanding doors. But it was a pretty good experience. Teaches you a lot of life lessons.
No doubt. What would you say is the worst job that you were given in that
I'd
aspect?
have to say emptying the dust collector.
Oh yeah.
It didn't have a hopper. 4 bags.
Ooh.
Teaches you a lot about procrastination. You don't want to let it get too full.
Oh wow. So what would that look like? You would literally try and scoop the dust out with a stick or something into a bin? Is that?
Yeah, usually. And one of the other employees would hit the side of it with a board and have a sawdust shower.
It takes me back. Bit of PTSD for me, I guess, because like being an apprentice, 20 years ago when things were a little bit different, you could tradies would get away with a lot more. Let's just put it that way. I know one of my experiences as a first year apprentice, again, the same kind of job was emptying the dust bags. Thankfully we had bags, so it wasn't too bad. But at the leaving the shop one day, I had opened the boot of my car, which is called a trunk in the States, I guess. Back of the car, open it up, and there's a dust bag sitting inside my boot, and I'm thinking, oh God, the guys are just playing tricks on me as they do. Go to lift it out, but someone had cut a big incision with a Stanley knife on the underside, filled my entire car with MDF dust. Again, probably wouldn't get away with those tricks these days, but definitely teaches you some humbling, some humbling lessons, that's for sure.
No, for sure.
So you grew up in the cabinet making shop, and you would have had various jobs throughout the time there, and working the summers there, as you've alluded to. Was there a time along that journey where you felt like this is the industry that you wanted to work in, or
yeah, not necessarily at the beginning. My passion was always, and my dream was always to become an architect. And, I studied architecture in university, and always came back to the shop every summer. And, I really started to get a little more involved. Right around the time my father got his first CNC machine, I was there to help him along the way.
Make that transition into the technology side of it? Is that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And that's actually when I met Roger. When I first met Roger, I was really, planning on continuing my education and becoming an architect. My dream was always to design custom homes. And he was fairly persuasive. What Mozaik was doing, at the time was, I thought pretty amazing. And, designing a house and having it be built is a bit of a longer run rate. But, the speed at which you could just take something in your mind, design it in Mosaic, and cut it out and put it together was staggering and really, sparked something in me.
That's really cool. And your father's shop, have they had a CNC machine for a long time? Is that?
No, they bought their first CNC machine in 2011.
2011, right? Okay, that would have been around about the time that Mozaik sort of started. I think Mozaik kind of kicked off
just before. Yeah, we used another industry software, and wasn't a great fit for us. We were lucky enough to be around right when Mozaik launched.
It would have been pretty early in the piece then that you would have.
Yeah, I think we're Mozaik's 20th customer.
Right. Wow. Okay. So did you come across Mozaik at the Atlanta trade show?
It was actually just launched at IWF in Atlanta, 2012. It was launched that year. But I didn't have the luxury of going to that show. I met it through a gentleman, Alex Collett, and he's the CNC product manager for Acros Machinery. And I used another, at the time, probably the industry leading cabinet software for custom cabinet making. But I didn't really, it wasn't necessarily for me. I found Mosaic much more intuitive. And I was really sold at the time, especially with my architecture background, that it could generate a SketchUp model. And that today, SketchUp is hardly needed, but at the time, that was definitely what drew me in.
Interesting, yeah, and I think something similar came up with the chat with Jason as well. In episode 1, that SketchUp kind of familiarity, in a sense, was a nice segue into starting with Mosaic and feeling comfortable. I'd imagine that would have been the case for many people back in those days too.
Yeah, no, it is an amazing tool.
I would say like similar products in the mindset of like the simplicity approach and giving you only the tools you need at the time. Like there's some kind of synergy there between the two applications, I would say, and the two approaches. Coming from like an architecture background, no doubt you would have used, Autodesk products and things like that, where, I guess for a lot of people, you'd start there and it's pretty overwhelming. A lot of buttons, a lot of choices, and I think for me, that's kind of like when I first opened SketchUp, it was like, okay, it's not too overwhelming. Most of the things are hidden away unless you go looking for them, sort of thing. So, the simplicity of that interface was what I was drawn to personally. And same when I looked at Mosaic, I was like, okay, this doesn't feel too overwhelming. Like I think I can learn this pretty quick. And there's something about that.
Yeah, it feels friendly.
Yeah, for sure.
I do remember my early years of university when I was never necessarily had plans of being in the, taking over his shop. He took me along to a few CNC open houses, and the spark or the the seed was planted early for him that, this was the way of the future. He needed to evolve, and which is a little ironic if you've ever met my father. He's I'm still not 100% sure if he knows how to copy and paste yet, but but he certainly did know that, to be able to keep up and and continue to produce, quality work, he would have to make the plunge.
And no doubt you would have probably been heavily involved at that point in time when he did take that plunge.
That's an interesting, interesting. I did help him. I did actually take a year off of school. I was studying architecture, and it was right between the year where I was going to go and take, have my 2 final years to get my master's. And I took a year off to help him integrate a CNC into his shop. And it was certainly a learning curve.
It sounds like that would have been a pretty pivotal moment, in a transition from, a traditional kind of table saw shop to a CNC. How did that play out for your father? Like, was there any, concern or hesitation in making that jump? Or
there certainly is. I would say he knew that he had to do it, but there was an element of fear there. You'd have to think he made cabinets for over 20 years with his 2 hands running board through a panel saw, and now he has to trust the success of his entire business in a software, which again, low to no tech skills, and the CNC. But if cabinet makers are anything, they're stubborn and determined, and he definitely made that work.
So that many years running a table saw, has he still got all his digits?
No. No.
I mean that's got to be the biggest advantage of like CNCs that have come along. I think most cabbies these days just don't know how good they've got it with.
Yeah, no. Joinker got him.
Ouch. That's not the nicest way to lose one. Thinking about that though, like that transition, like he wouldn't have had. Did he use software at all
Yeah, he did. He used, a fairly old system. I believe it's been sunset, maybe 10 years ago, throughout the 90s. Um, and it helped him. And he really got it, just to really portray to render and present the spaces to customers. But just before he got the CNC, he did upgrade to another product, and at the time, it was probably the industry leading solution for custom cabinet makers. But along came Mosaic.
Right. And what was the inspiration to make the jump from what he was using to Mosaic?
It's interesting. He makes high end custom cabinets, and to really convey the message to the end customers who are primarily generally remote, and could be that he's doing cabinets for their summer home, and they're remote. He had to really make sure that he really presented the design in a really clear manner. And I actually met the CNC product manager, Alex Collett, for Acris Machinery, in our shop, and I said, if only there was a cabinet software that used SketchUp, that would be the one for me. And he said, actually, it's really interesting that you mentioned this. A good friend of mine, Roger Taylor, has created Mosaic, and it actually links with SketchUp. And I signed up, and this was in August of 2012. And I think I was their 20th customer, and I've never looked back.
There you go. So you signed up for Mosaic, and then what happened next? How did you learn the software, and what did that look like?
Well, yeah. Way back in the day, we had Roger actually train us and onboard us, and that was really special. And he's really the pioneer of custom cabinet software, and I didn't really know it at the time, but it was I'd jump in a time machine tomorrow and go back to those days.
Pretty special to be taught by someone who's like, yeah, no doubt the pioneer of the industry in that when it comes to cabinet making software in general. So that's pretty cool to being able to learn from him, and also like just the idea of being able to learn from somebody that develop software, from the perspective of like you're seeing the way to learn and use a program from the person's mind, designing how it should and how it's intended to be used. I think that's like there's something about that's pretty special.
Yeah, 100%.
Thinking about so then talk me through this timeline. So 2012 August, you've started with Mosaic. Roger's onboarded you. What happens next?
So what happens next? Well, actually, unfortunately, in January of 2013, my father's shop burned to the ground.
Wow.
And
I
actually had the burnt collet out of his CNC there over next door. That was certainly a step back. But as mentioned, cabinet makers are stubborn and resilient. He rebuilt. And at this point, I was, I was kind of thinking, I had a better head back to school. His shop was up and running, and I still really stayed in touch with Roger. And Roger invited me to the AWFS show that summer, and I started doing on-site trainings for customers in Canada, and I really thought that Roger was building something special, and it was really a fun job actually working with Roger and the team, and Roger is fairly persuasive and really convinced me to join him.
Yeah, nice. That's pretty cool. And just to circle back to your father's shop burning down for a second, would have been pretty obviously horrible experience, but lucky you had Mosaic in a sense that you haven't lost anything in terms of like a physical hardware dongle or anything like that. It's like the software's replaceable. Like
actually, we did lose a software dongle, and we tried to get it back, and I think their answer was no problem, go through insurance and pay full price.
Yeah, I mean, I've come across so many people over the years that have been in that situation, and I feel like that's what's changed when you start talking about subscription model software and software that's not licensed via a dongle and that kind of thing as well. Like, there's just it's hard to like explain some of those advantages of that until you've been in that situation where you've been through losing everything and then having to start from the ground up again. So.
Yeah. No, it is a fairly traumatic experience, and I always make sure to tell my wife to make sure curling iron's unplugged before we leave the house.
What actually caused the fire on the CNC?
We don't. Well, the entire shop burnt down. We don't necessarily know what caused the fire, but it did start at the end of the shop where the spray booth is. So. It could have been a rag in a garbage can.
Gosh. And was it in the middle of the night or is it during the day? Like,
yeah.
what?
Yes,
middle
of course.
Oh, man.
minus 13 Celsius.
Wow. That's crazy. So you've touched on the fact that you've studied architecture, that you've spent the summers working in your father's shop. At what point along the way did you start to see the impact that technology is having on the cabinet making industry in general?
Yeah. Great question. I think when the really spark was lit inside of me was when I cut out and assembled my first cabinet off of a CNC machine. And I think that there's really something kind of magical about designing, a product, customizing it, and cutting it out. And of course, I was a little selfish back in the early days, and I was making cabinets for my own home, but. It was really just, it was a really special feeling that the first time you put that first box off of a CNC together, and, it goes together with such precision, and just it really, it takes a lot of the skill, out of the equation, and it's just so consistent.
I love that. Like, I don't know, for me, through my career, spending a lot of time helping people get machines connected to various softwares. I loved that aspect of it. Like the excitement, people invest a lot of money. They spend a lot of money on a CNC machine and spend a lot of time getting software up to speed. And, and then that's the pivotal moment, right? That's the bit where it's like, okay, I've clicked a button and now this machine's making dust. Something's come off it and it just goes together like a, puzzle. And it's like, yeah, you see that light bulb moment for everyone go, oh man, why have I waited so long to do this? Like that's the...
Yeah, no, for sure. At the end of the day, with a lot of softwares that we use, sure, it'll print off a report for you. It'll give you a table. They all add value. But there's something really special about actually making a machine produce something on the fly, something custom that actually, goes together and really becomes something of immense value.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Thinking back to the early days when you first got involved with Mosaic, like what were those days like? What were you doing? What was your job at the time?
One word is fun. We really had a lot of fun. We really felt like, we were the underdogs and we were really building something that could really make a difference in the industry. And I would just have to say fun.
That's cool. I like that. Like, I think everyone wants to be in some way part of something that's progressing, something that's fighting the good fight, so to speak. Like, I know personally for me, one of the things that attracted me to Mosaic was like the slogan of, we want to make CNC software as, commonplace as a panel saw or a table saw in a shop. And I think that's like, I don't know, that's the movement. That's the the bit that makes it special.
Yeah, for sure. Which is still our mission statement today.
Yeah, love that. How do you feel like we're on the pathway of doing that? Would you say we're?
No, I think I think that we really have made a pretty significant difference. Especially when we speak with some of our machinery partners. They're definitely able to sell machines to customers that they certainly couldn't sell machines to in the past. Software became, unattainable, and the price of CNC machines dropped, and the price of software, kept going up. And really, Mosaic really empowered these cabinet shops to be able to, number one, use a tool that they can easily use, they can easily learn how to use, solves their problems, has the flexibility needed. But more than that, drive their CNC machine, and really, there's a vacuum in the industry before we were launched.
There you go. Hey, that's spot on. So what did you start out doing for Mosaic then? Like, were you in the role of training and support, or?
Yeah, I started out doing trainings, primarily online trainings, but I also really enjoyed doing on-site trainings. Generally not required, but there's lots of cabinet shops around where Eastern Canada where I live, so I went and got them set up. I really love going to each cabinet shop, meeting the people. Fairly social part of Canada. So
Yeah,
it was a pretty fun experience. But yeah, no, I really love, helping our customers get started. And, it was actually a lot of these experiences that really drive, the decisions that I make today and what Mosaic, functionality we're going to add.
it's quite humbling, isn't it? Like, you go to all these shops and you see how many different types of businesses there are and all the different ways people build cabinets, and and they're all right as well. Like, there's this, like, each to their own in the way they want to go about constructing things. So,
for sure.
and I guess I just kind of did the same for me as well. But back in those days, the technology wasn't quite there. Like, online meetings were slow, cumbersome. Like, screen sharing was really, really slow and cumbersome. Like, a lot of that's changed now that enables the online training to be a lot better.
Yeah, I think a training, primarily online, but I did do some on-site trainings, and it's really humbling going to visit cabinet makers, meet them, see how they do things, and it was really some of those early experiences. Meeting cabinet makers, understanding their challenges, that really, guides a lot of the decisions we make today. At the end of the day, with Mosaic, we need to be solving a problem, and working with all of these companies over the years, you really do learn what is a problem.
It's nothing like seeing those problems firsthand, for sure, and walking through a shop and being able to see, touch, and experience what those things are.
Yeah, for sure. You may see the problem, and the business owner is standing right next to you, and he doesn't.
There you go. Yeah, and that's like the collective experience of that's really interesting. Like, the more kind of shops you go to, the more kind of you get in a gist of like what the larger kind of repeatable themes are that keep coming up over and over. And I think that's kind of like where, yeah, there's something in that we can, what are the collective problems we can fix? So you've obviously spent then quite a few years doing training. Did your role ever expand into anything else?
Probably not formally, but it was pretty exciting when Roger would invite you down to Alabama to talk development. Roger really, really collaborated, and really listened to what the trainers were hearing. It's one thing for somebody to request a feature, that person definitely needs this feature. But if you put every feature that every customer requested in, you'd have the most bloated software that's really challenging to use. But our trainers are really in the front lines, and Roger was really good at listening, and it was really a privilege for him to involve me in some of the decisions, and it was at this point that I really started learning the complexities of developing software, and Mosaic is grounded on the simple principle that simplicity sells software. At the end of the day, it needs to solve a problem. Solving complex problems is hard enough. Doing it in a simple manner, that's really the challenge. And this is, that I learned a lot from Roger on those development trips.
That's really interesting. I think you've touched on like such a key point of the whole thing here, that what Mosaic's sort of like secret sauce, if you'd like, is that being able to take a complex problem but solve it in a simple manner and present that in a way that's easy to use. I think that's kind of like such a massive part of it.
That is, that is the hard part.
Yeah, no doubt. You would have, I've heard the stories over the years of, Roger would kind of give people, one feature, he would get people to boil their lists down to like one request instead of coming.
That's also a really great lesson. And we would come down. I would come down pretty excited. I'd have a list of 15 features. And Roger would kind of maybe glance at my list and see the length of it, and he'd say, "All right, buddy, pick the first 3. You only get 3." And it was a really good exercise because it really makes you think. It really makes you think. What is important. We've a pretty extensive roadmap ahead of us, but something has to be first and something has to be last. And, that these are the challenging decisions that we make daily.
100%. That's, and I learned that lesson myself when I got involved. Like, I would have a list of so many things and it would be like, okay, how do I boil that down? And what are the real ones that are going to make the biggest impact? And it's hard to do. Like even today, like, you hear so many good ideas and you think, okay, well, like, what is going to make the most impact and what order do I put these in? It's like, it's easier said than done, until you sit there and go, how am I willing to rank these? It's not easy.
Yeah. No, it really makes you think, and it really makes you, in that moment, learn what really is important.
Quick recap on where we're at. Like, you've shared a little bit about the story that you've grown up in a cabinet making family, grown up in sawdust, transitioned into being involved in helping your family business make the transition into CNC software. And, in amongst that, ended up working for Mosaic, doing training. And, that over the years expanded into being involved into development discussions and various other parts of the business, pre-sales, phone calls and things like that. And then at what point in time did the sort of Mosaic teaming up with Cyncly and the acquisition take place? Like, and how did that change your role within the company?
Yeah, no, I found out the news at IWF of 22. It was, a little bit of apprehension, a little bit of unease. Really, Roger had grown to be a fairly close family friend. And we are cabinet makers. We don't like change. So yeah, there's a little bit of worry at the beginning. But it was really put at ease fairly quickly once I met, the leadership at Cyncly. They really did believe in what we were doing. They seen that we were making an impact, and they really they wanted to protect that and really nurture that and allow us to continue. But certainly it was a bit of a change, the new role. I do view it as, definitely continuing Roger's legacy. He's built an amazing product, an amazing, amazing business model, and most importantly, an amazing team and team culture, and really, we really want to keep that going.
It's certainly not easy to like step into the shoes of the person that's like the the founding father of the industry in that sense, like
no, and I don't think I don't try to. No,
that's a big thing, for sure. It is like, it's not, it is trying to do things in your own way, and there's certainly a transition through that period. And I think Roger's said it himself, like it's a passing of the baton sort of thing. Like it's a moment of going like, you guys are young and and are hungry to continue this legacy and drive this forward. And I think that's like so much respect for him for recognizing, the time in as well to, to when to pass that along as well. And you've known Roger a lot longer than me, and obviously, you've got the weighted responsibility of not breaking it, so to speak. So, that's something I
That does
wouldn't,
cross my mind. Yeah.
no doubt. Yeah. But it's in that transition to Cyncly, like you've obviously then stepped into the VP role at Mosaic, and I guess like the sign behind you there, the buck stops here. It's
Yeah, no, for sure. I certainly do. Developing software is, there's a lot of responsibility in there. Within the next 7 days, we're gonna surpass 10,000 active companies, and that's actually around, well over 16,000 users. And you know, as a Canadian, I'm a hockey fan, and I bet 16,500 is an attendance of an average NHL game. And whenever we make a decision about what we're going to do next, the imagery in my mind is, there's this many people. There's an arena full of cabinet makers there, and does this really make a difference for them? And it's the buck does stop here. I do surround myself with a pretty talented team. I think we have an amazing culture here at Mosaic. All of our team members are definitely rowing in the same direction. They all love what they do. They're very passionate. They're all industry experts. They've all been covered in sawdust at one point in their life.
it's pretty special, like being involved in you go to trade shows and things like that. And, I guess the bit that a lot of people might not realize is, our team kind of gets together. We'll be at a trade show the entire day talking about Mosaic, talking to customers about Mosaic, and then we'll go out for dinner and drinks and we'll talk about Mosaic. It's, it's
Yeah. Some of the best decisions we have, are made in those social settings.
100%. It's like it's passion, and everyone's so kind of believing in the cause. And I guess, the company's mission statement, right? Like we all want this like software to be as commonplace as a table saw or a panel saw. And that's, I think everyone's so believing in that it's when you've got that culture, a lot of other things become easier. You're not trying to convince people in what we're trying to do. It's everyone is part of it because they really want to be part of it, and that's pretty special for sure. And it's amazing, that I guess the company has been acquired and moved into a supportive entity, and a supportive group, as Cyncly is, and and nurtured that through the acquisition as well.
Yeah,
And,
it's really been a really fantastic experience.
so thinking about the transition in 2022 with the acquisition of Mosaic into the Cyncly group, what were some of the major advantages, or like what biggest changes that you noticed in that transition?
Yeah, no, the amount of support that we received from Cyncly is it's unparalleled. But one of the biggest differences is we've certainly, we're of course every day continuing our, Roger's legacy, and making sure that in our core markets, which we've operated in for years, we continue and do better than we've ever done, continuously improve. But we've certainly turned our eye to the rest of the world. The problems that Mosaic solves for cabinet makers in the U.S., Canada, Australia, New Zealand, they exist all over the world. And there's a cabinet shop in the UK. There's a cabinet shop in India that's moving from a panel saw to a CNC, or even just needs help with managing daily tasks. And we're really excited to really tell our story globally, and obviously you're a fairly key part of that, and we couldn't have picked a better person.
Well, it's a good story to tell, and that makes it a lot easier. So, that's part of the reason why we're here today. To share that news, or share that story with the world. So, and I guess part of that transition into Cyncly, no doubt would have opened up other pathways to success in terms of like ability to hire talent in various locations and things like that? Like,
For sure, yeah. Cyncly, has offices spanning the globe, and we're setting up teams in new geographies. India, the UK,
yeah.
Australia, of course, bringing your team in, and we're really excited to my core mission is to make Mosaic the number one cabinet software globally.
So, as the VP of Mosaic, no doubt you would wear many hats and be across many different topics. The primary one being product development and leading that growth. What is it that makes? How does that work? Give us a little bit of insight.
Yeah, for
there.
sure. Well, that's certainly the part of my job that gets me out of bed every morning. It's probably my favorite part of my day. But it's one thing to know about the cabinet making industry, know about what cabinet makers' daily challenges are, and what features we really need to put into Mosaic. And then of course making it easy to use is another thing. But at the end of the day, something needs to be built, and our engineering team is world class, and it's really the typical architect engineer relationship where the architect will, anything is possible, to build this. At the end of the day, engineering and developing Mosaic, the feature set, it's hard, and we have a really solid foundation, and they definitely make my job easy.
That's so true. I think it's so interesting for people to know that you've got that architecture background and you describe it as an architecture of what you're trying to design and anything's possible, to then the realities of this thing has to be built and developed, and the merging of those two worlds coming together. And I think I see it as it's so unique that you're in a position of having grown up in a cabinet making family, studied architecture, and the combining of those strengths put you in such a unique position to have those discussions with the engineering team, with the development team. It is a unique perspective. I think for most people, it's you're either an architect or you're a cabinet maker. It's pretty rare to have both skill sets and study both and learn both. For me, I feel that's part of the secret, of Mosaic is your leadership there in development it can't be underplayed how pivotal that is now in moving forward. And then, having those 10 plus years of working with Roger, and, obviously Roger being the visionary and the pioneer of the entire industry, all of that comes together as that's the secret sauce to me. It's it is really, it's about the people, the experience. And then, like you said, we've got the best engineering team you could ever hope for. So, it's we're pretty fortunate in that sense.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. It's a great story.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the future then. What excites you most about where Mosaic's headed, or where the industry in general is heading?
Yeah, I think I'll speak for Mosaic. I think that we have a lot of good ideas. It's easy for us to be impatient and want everything done now, but we spoke about our engineering team, and there's quite a bit of job security here for the next decade anyway.
How does it work? I guess for people listening to this podcast, right, they might think, okay, well, I've got an idea, how do I share it with Mosaic? And when does that idea get taken from an idea to put into?
Well, that's a really, really good question. First of all, we don't own all of the good ideas. We kind of see everything. We do try to stay grounded in the industry and really make sure that we never lose touch. I try to go to every show that there is. I try to talk to as many cabinet makers, not just at the show. Anytime I have a long layover, I try to go visit some Mosaic customers. So we really want to make sure we stay grounded in the industry and really learn about what, don't lose touch. So we're always trying to learn about, what's really happening today. And then of course, everybody that I interact with has a great idea for what Mosaic needs to do next. And they're all in some regards, they're all great ideas. But something has to be first and something has to be last. And I always think of it as this analogy, when we're going to change an area of Mosaic, we need to do it all at once. We don't want to change one part of the drawer box library in one update, and then the next update change another part of it. So we really try to cluster very similar themes together. And it's really challenging. It really is triage. It's what can we develop that's going to have the biggest impact across 10,000 companies and 16,000 users, and also not every problem is the same amount of effort. Some of them are fairly fundamental, and I just think what makes me excited for the future is if you think about for those customers have been around for 5 to 10 years, let's say. If you think about Mosaic 5 years ago or even 7 years ago, it's really unrecognizable to what it is today. And if whenever I envision Mosaic, in 5 years from now, it's going to be unrecognizable again. But we'll still make sure it's easy to use.
Yeah, and still solve the problems that it needs to solve, right? I think that's like
for sure.
You've touched on. It's that's pretty cool because obviously we're at such a interesting point in technology with the advancements of AI and all that sort of side of things. Everything's going to evolve so quickly over the next 5 years, and I think it sounds like Mosaic's certainly in such a good position to take advantage of some of those advancements in technology and move forward, but while still being grounded in what are the problems we're solving. So
for sure,
you touched on the trade show aspect. I think trade shows it's such a unique thing. In 4 days, you'll hear from people from all over a country. Typically if the show's in the States, it's everyone from various parts of the States will come together, and you'll hear such varying bits of feedback in a short period of time. I imagine that's so pivotal in deciding focus on.
Yeah. It's you'll always when there's no replacement for a face-to-face conversation, and the way that we sell our software online and most of our training is virtually. They're really special events. First of all, it's always nice to see working CNC machinery and be in an industry event, but at the same time, it's also an amazing experience just talking with customers, and you'll hear the good and you'll also hear the bad, and it really helps shape the direction of what we're going to do next.
So how does this evolve? When you get an idea of a feature, whether it come from a trade show or direct feedback from trainers or whatever it is, and then that sparks an idea, and then my understanding is you would kind of map that out. You'd plan the architecture behind how that could look and could work, and then that evolves into discussions with the engineering team to figure out what's feasible. And then
no, for sure. With any feature, it has to fit in with our master plan. It has to be the right time. When we're gonna, to my analogy earlier, when we're gonna renovate a room, we're gonna, make sure and do it right. But there's also a lot of responsibility that comes with development. For example, it's really essential that as we evolve Mosaic and as we mentioned, we were approaching 10,000 customers. We really understand the responsibility that we have to ensure that updates are seamless. Really, changing an area of Mosaic is really akin to open heart surgery. We need to make sure that Monday morning when everybody updates, this is stress free and they can, everything that worked before still works. And, I feel like that's something that's really easy to say. But in reality, that's what we spend the bulk of our time doing. And that is just, improving Mosaic, but making sure that, when you update, what worked before, still works the same way.
It's like open heart surgery for a hockey stadium full of people at the same time.
I know, yeah, and they're all going to yell at me if things go wrong.
Bit of it for me that's like, you can't underplay is like people are using Mosaic in so many different ways. You've got people building cabinets, you've got people building closets, you've got people building boats, you've got people building camper vans, caravans, people doing architectural work, people doing commercial work. It's so many different use cases of it out there. If you're going to implement a new feature, it's like, well, how's that going to be used across every one of those industries? There's like...
No, for sure. We really do try to have something in every update for everyone. There's, looking back, there's the theme of last year was the optimizer. We really tried to improve, of course, your optimization, save you cheats. We tried to, improve tool paths, stay down nesting, various different ramping options. We support new machines, as we expand to new markets. Not everybody's using a nesting machine. And that's probably didn't appeal to your really front end design facing customers. So we're pretty excited. Everybody's been very patient, thankfully, for version 14 to come out. And that's really going to make sure that we check the box of helping, the end designer and really presenting your designs to your customers. But we really do try to evenly distribute, the improved benefits to a very diverse, customer group. But we really do try to put something in every update for every type of customer.
Yeah, and not easy to do for sure. But when you think about version 14, that's I would say probably the most ambitious release that we've attempted in the sense of the amount of moving parts that would go into
it is for sure, but they all dovetail together, and it would be really challenging to break them up into smaller updates. But for those who know, version 14 is going to launch a rendering engine, an add-on for Mosaic. But we really have to give quite a bit of thought to what makes a good rendering, and it's not necessarily the rendering engine. It's the way that your materials look. So materials need an overhaul, and of course, our customers for years have been asking for more 2D CAD features, and we threw that in there as well, and I really think that 2025 and 2026 are going to be pretty pivotal years for our product.
Pretty excited.
Yeah, stay tuned.
So what would your advice be to anyone starting out with Mosaic or potentially just starting out with their first CNC?
For sure, I would definitely have to say take advantage of our training resources. For hopefully all of our customers out there listening, we offer all new customers an hour and a half of free onboarding. We're basically the premise of this is to have a trainer log on with you. Everybody builds cabinets differently. Every company is different. And log on with you and learn how you do things and help you set Mosaic up, for success. Will you be an expert at the end of that? No. Will you have everything set up that you need forever? No, but you're certainly going to be started down the right path. You're going to know the good habits, and we give this to you for free. And it's really sometimes it's sad when we see that only 65 to 70% of new customers take advantage of this. But I would have to say, make sure to, we're giving you this for free, and take advantage.
For sure. And we have some of the, world-class trainers around the world that,
Yeah, they're all cabinet makers. They're all there, and they're all really driven by helping the end customer.
100%. That's really good advice. And what about for people buying their first CNC?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's never going to call in sick. It'll always be there for you. But the principle of measure twice, cut once still applies with a CNC machine, for sure.
I love that. Well said. All right, so I'm going to change pace a little bit here, and we'll jump into a bit more of a rapid fire sort of set of questions. Other than Mosaic, so you can't say Mosaic, what other softwares do you use, and what are your favorite other software applications out there?
My heart wants to say SketchUp, but I'm in a more corporate environment now, so I'd have to say PowerPoint.
Nice. I haven't really figured my way around PowerPoint yet, but I'll have to get some pointers from you. What's your favorite tool in a cabinet shop?
CNC router or Bondo.
Bondo, is that a glue or a
body fill?
Right, gotcha. We call that bog over here. I know you spend a lot of time on planes. Window or aisle?
Window.
Beer or wine?
Depends on the wine.
Yeah, nothing like choosing between an ice cold beer on a hot day or a Shiraz with a nice Indian meal or something, right? Where do you call home?
Prince Edward Island, Canada.
When you first told me that, I had to Google it, and I had to learn it's connected to the mainland by is it
bridge.
An 8-mile long bridge? Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's a little longer, but it takes about 10 minutes to drive over.
Does anyone jog the bridge? I'm curious. If people are marathon runners, would they run along the bridge?
They'll do very, very, very few and far between special events where you can jog the bridge.
There's no kind of side.
No, you know how to walk on it. It's very protective. Yeah.
Oh wow, there you go.
Yeah.
That's
you
cool.
Pull over, the police are there. They're you need a tow truck and get off here. It's security reasons.
Okay, cool. There you go. What do you do for fun? Golf. Are you any good?
Yeah. You're only as good as the people you play with, yeah.
Wow, yeah, you'd be pretty good if you played with me, because my golf swing is it's either a slice or a hook. The area in the middle called the fairway is I've never landed there. So. Do you have any children?
Yes, Sophie, Thomas, and Mosaic.
I'm not going to ask you which one gets more attention. Well, you might not be married if you answered that one honestly. One word to describe Mosaic's future.
Bright.
What's your favorite artist?
Artist? Like music?
Yeah.
God, Alan Doyle.
Thought you were going to say Swift for sure.
No, it's actually Alan Doyle. Yeah.
There you go.
Who he is, yeah.
No clue. Well, Michael, it's been awesome catching up with you today and sharing a bit about your story and your role here at Mosaic. Just to wrap up, where would people go to connect with Mosaic? How do they stay in touch?
Yeah, no, for sure. Obviously, our website to learn more. Email sales at Mozaik Software if they have any questions. But just as importantly, our social media user communities, our social media pages. Get to hear from you, our trusted spokesperson.
Well, hopefully they don't mind the Aussie accent.